Hello again, my dear friends, and I know I don't put videos on YouTube every day, but I do them from time to time, and I do thank my subscribers, and I hope that the things I talk about are of interest, at least to some. I know they won't be of interest to a lot of people, because they can be considered a little specialised, I suppose. 39 years ago, this December it will be 40 years ago, I joined an organisation which was founded by a Western master of yoga, Sir George King, who founded the Aetherius Society. And while I'm not here to represent the society per se, I'm here to talk about some of the things, again, that I have learned in those 39 years. I do look at YouTube videos quite a lot. It's amazing over a 39-year period, although I've been studying these subjects for longer than that, before I even found this society. It's amazing over that period how many things that one can learn, especially as or when one finds a very good teacher. Although some people may not like this, may not agree with it, it is factually true. Sir George King, founder of the Aetherius Society, has made available to mankind a tremendous amount of information which wasn't previously available to us before him releasing it. Not because we deserve it, but because mankind on earth is now running out of time. In fact, to be even more honest, we on this earth, we are not short of time. We have for some decades been on borrowed time. And it's because of this urgency that he and the others he represents from outside of this earth, they can see the urgency. And so they have given us more and more ammunition to fight our way through evolution. And I'm afraid we do have to fight sometimes against nonsensical conditioning which has been put out for thousands of years. Anyway, the point I want to make here initially is that I quite regularly look around the various videos on YouTube, and over again I see what to me and to some others is a sad situation, that many dedicated, in inverted commas, scientists who believe they are speaking the truth have actually been so indoctrinated into basic materialism, excuse me, I've got a tickle in my throat, that they make assumptions. Others may agree with those assumptions, and then they come on a video on YouTube and in other places and they say, well, this is how it is. No, this is how you perceive it. I will make one or two categorical statements during this short video that some people may not like, but to the best of my ability and to the best of my understanding, these are truthful statements. No member of our race on this planet will progress in understanding beyond a certain point until they have something of a spiritual attitude, not so much a materialistic attitude. I have seen quite a few videos. I don't necessarily watch them all the way through, I just get the gist of them, although sometimes I watch them all the way through. And I've seen video after video in which, and I'm not knocking science, I'm in favour of science, I'm not knocking any individual scientist, but in which some scientist or other or lecturer on science or technology will make a comment, and I'll just sit there in amazement, thinking, well, of course that's not correct. I'm trying to think of a good example. There are many, but when you're giving a talk like this and it's spontaneous, it's not always easy to bring it to mind when you want it. But I've heard astronomers make comments about the galaxy and saying, oh, we assumed this, but we're now discovering we didn't get it right. Well, I could have told you years ago you weren't going to get it right. Because you've got to have a spiritual come mystical appreciation in order to understand what is actually there. I emphasize over and over again that I do not knock any specific individuals or group of individuals. I'm talking about the types of things that are said and my feelings towards it. You get astronomers, for example, who look at planets and stars and even galaxies through telescopes, etc. And when it comes to planets, they see balls of rock or balls of gas, like Jupiter. Oh, it's a big ball of gas. Mars is a ball of rock. The Earth is a ball of rock. What they don't realize is, eventually they will, and the sooner the better, but eventually they will realize that each of these, the planets in this solar system, and I'll throw in incidentally, yes, Pluto is a planet. It's referred to by the great beings from other worlds as a planet. What we see as a planet, including the one directly beneath my feet now and yours, the Mother Earth, they are all living, breathing, super conscious beings. There is a life force. Take all the vegetation on this planet, take all the vegetation, animals, insects, birds, humans, fish off the planet. You still have a body of a living goddess, if you will. You know, so-called primitive people who referred to planets and stars as gods and goddesses, they were absolutely correct. They are. They're living, breathing, superconscious beings, super conscious beings. They don't realize Mars, Jupiter are living beings. This has been known about for thousands of years, but only in certain quarters. I'll throw in one. These are comments as they occur to me. One comment that I hear regularly, and it's again, I'm not knocking anyone, but it's usually by people who haven't done any homework at all. And somebody will talk on a certain subject, and somebody throws in, "Ah, yes, well, of course, no one knows the answer to that." No, what you mean is you don't know the answer to that. There are many things that are known in certain quarters, but are not generally known. The planets are living beings. The sun is a living being. But in the case of planets and stars, you're not dealing with single entities, like, for example, I am, to all intents and purposes, a single entity, as indeed are you. But millions, even billions of years down the evolutionary line, what happens is a group of individuals who are very highly advanced from an evolutionary point of view will come together and go through mystical initiations beyond our conception, and they will eventually form a multiple entity. They will come together and have such intense harmony, love and harmony between them, that they then operate as a single entity. That is what is at the centre of this earth. There is a life force there. If you read Sir George King's book, Visit to the Logos of Earth, he actually goes and was given permission in the centre of the earth to see an aspect of the Mother Earth, the entity itself, herself. Some of those entities which have had numerous incarnations, lives, as a planet, billions of years further down the line, will come together and form an even greater multiple entity. And that will be the life force, or logos, of a new star. Like our sun, it's a vast multiple entity that operates as a single entity. And it was the sun that visualized, in the beginning of the solar system, the environment within which the planets could form. Lesser beings than the sun, the solar logos, then used the material that the sun had brought into being in order to form bodies for themselves, and the planets formed. It wasn't by chance. There is a predefined, if you will, evolutionary scheme, certainly as far as we are concerned in this planetary system. You see, billions and billions of years down the line, a number of solar logi, the life forces of various stars, who have all gone through billions of years of experience as stars. They will eject off, in what we call a supernova, they will eject off some of the basic material that they've been using as a body, and the life force will join with other solar life forces, solar logi, and it will become an even greater solar logos, and quite possibly will become the central star of a new galaxy, and a new galaxy will come into being. Everything in manifestation has life within it. Without life, nothing exists. Some of that life force is at a very rudimentary level. I mean, pieces of a lump of granite hasn't got an individual consciousness like we have, you know. But a whole range of pieces of granite, maybe a whole range of mountains, may have a life force which collectively can be thought of. I'm trying to think of the right words. You know, when you get into your 70s, sometimes the words escape you. But thought essence, which is gaining experience, so that millions of years later, that same consciousness can move away from the mineral kingdom and take on vegetable forms. You see, there is an evolutionary process. I remember a comment on one of the videos years ago. Somebody once put a video up there, and the title of it was, "Does evolution evolve?" No, it doesn't. It's a fixed system through which we all work our way, or wend our way. That those same consciousnesses which once ensouled minerals may, millions of years later, be able to handle the more complicated atomic and molecular structures of vegetable forms. You can tell this is spontaneous because I'll make mistakes as I go. It's easy done. Those same consciousnesses millions of years later may be able to handle, having gained more experience, more complex vegetable forms, and then some of the simpler animal forms and more complex animal forms. And this is what happens, and it's the same consciousnesses which are moving through evolution, taking on different forms as they go, ensouling different body forms as they go. Those same consciousnesses will wend their way over millions of years through different animal forms, and eventually get to the point where the consciousnesses have gained enough experience that they can handle what we would call animal bodies, sufficiently sophisticated, with brain structures sufficiently sophisticated that self-awareness can dawn. And yes, the individual becomes aware of itself as an individual. As my teacher, Sir George King, used to say, and probably still does wherever he is now, he used to say, if you could hear the thoughts of say a lower primate might look and say, there is food. A higher primate and a human being would look and think, I am hungry, because the higher level of consciousness is aware of I, me, the individual, I. And that makes a universe of difference once self-awareness dawns. Take this all in lowercase letters, because it's not a problem really, but we can see it as a problem. One of the problems with this is, of course, up to the point where self-awareness dawns, there are natural forces continually at work that help to assist that consciousness to evolve. Once self-awareness dawns, that individual consciousness becomes personally and individually aware, to some extent, of its own evolution. Because once you are able to be aware of yourself, and you can make decisions, you can analyze situations, you can also, as many of us do, make mistakes, and the learning process changes. We make mistakes in order that we can learn lessons. We are in a school, we are in a college, you can tell this is spontaneous, and we're learning lessons. There is a whole hierarchy of, this may get this video taken off, evil intelligences behind the scenes who are members of our own race, who in the Star Wars terminology have turned to the dark side of the Force, and for thousands of years have been psychologically and in other ways manipulating the majority of the population to keep mankind ignorant. They're still doing it now. And a long time ago they infiltrated the educational systems, and this is why, for example, scientists and others, anyone who goes through your normal schooling, colleges and universities, may not even realize that the whole system has been set up to only teach those things that are safe for the manipulators. So there's a tremendous field of information, of knowledge, which isn't even begun to be tapped, because millions of people don't even suspect that such things exist. But those who have reached a certain level of conscious awareness, and especially in my case, and I'm an ordinary person, I'm not claiming to be anything great myself, but a person such as myself who found a brilliant teacher, Sir George King, who is, to be perfectly honest, one of the best teachers that I think this world has ever seen. If you don't believe that, I suggest you go to the Aetherius Society website, aetherius.org, and look at some of the information that's being given. It leaves mainstream science in the Dark Ages in many ways, but it's given with a more spiritual, mystical approach. But anyway, as I was saying, when a life form gets to the stage of being a human being, the individual is responsible for their own evolution to a large extent. We do in fact reap what we sow, but take that in a positive way. I've been giving lectures, talks to the public, to special interest groups and the public generally, since the early 1990s. And I have found this myself, like I'm doing now. The more I talk to other people about things that I have learned, the more I begin to realize I know. I don't know where it comes from, but there are things I know. I don't remember reading it. I don't remember anybody saying it, but I know it. And this is reaping what you sow. You give it out, you get it back. And your understanding expands as a result of your own efforts. Because I, like every one of you, are responsible for your own personal evolution. The dark forces behind the scenes have tried to keep mankind ignorant and stop people raising their consciousness and becoming aware of other things. Because they know if too many people realize what they have been doing, the game's over. You know, they can only manipulate people who are ignorant. Once you know what they do, it's easy to protect yourself from it. Because you spot, you know, the manipulation when they try and do it. You know, try and catch you with it. Now we on this earth, we go through thousands, as we have been doing, as I have already done, as you have already done. We go through thousands of lives. You, the consciousness, not you, the body. You, the consciousness, have had body after body after body after body. Excuse me, I have stomach noises. You've been born possibly in different countries, spoken different languages. You've been born into different social situations. You've died at different ages for different reasons. Okay? And you've developed different skills. And when you do something that isn't correct, and especially if you know that it's not correct and you do it, in a future incarnation, when you come back as a baby again, which we all do, you will have certain limitations that you have brought upon yourself. You see, we invoke it ourselves. But you see, if you, as I'm trying to do now, and I stress that I'm no saint. My God, I'm no saint. I'm a very ordinary person, but at least I'm trying. I'm trying to give information to other people. Therefore, the more I do this, the more I realize I know, the more information comes to me, and my level of understanding increases. So in my next life, when I have a brand new body, which can adapt itself to how I am then, okay, I've got a fresh start on a possibly higher level, in some respects, than I've had in this life, or that I had in my last one. And over a period of time, the more you help others, the more help you get. The more you ignore others, the more you will be ignored. You've got to reap what you sow. It's the law. Nothing can get round that. Nothing at all. Okay? So as you try and do the right thing, it's not good enough to say, well, I don't hurt anyone. Well, that's okay, but what do you actively do that benefits others? That's what counts. It's not doing bad things. It's actively doing what you might call good things that counts. Because if you don't sow, you can't reap. And the only way that you can evolve is by sowing good stuff so that you reap good stuff. And you will. It may not come straight away. It may not come for several lives, but come it will. You see. And I'm afraid there are so many people who have been so conditioned. You can't see it on the camera, but I'm a licensed radio ham. I've held a full license for many years. My first amateur radio license was issued 45 years ago, and I've got some radio equipment over there. You know, and I love technology. I've got 2 computers, one behind me, one here. You know, and I love technology, but I'm not a slave to it, and that's the important thing. So many people have been so hoodwinked, so tricked into devoting their lives to their mobile phones, you know, that the consciousness closes down. Why? Because they're not giving out. You cannot get in unless you give out. You've got to. It's the law. And there is no way round that. Doesn't matter what anyone says. Doesn't matter what anyone believes. Okay. The point I'm getting at, excuse me, my nose itches. The point I'm getting at is that there is a fixed evolutionary scheme, and I'm going to talk you through some of this. This is my own wording, and I'm keeping this at a very basic level. I could go into a little more detail, but I won't, because this is intended primarily for people who know very little about such subjects. But you, the conscious you, not the body that you're riding around in, but the consciousness that's looking out through those eyes, listening through those ears, the you inside, the conscious you. You've already gone through thousands of lives, even though you don't remember it at the moment. Eventually you will remember. In fact, I'll prophesy, in some future life, whether it's the next one or 200 lives down the line, whatever it is, you, the conscious you, will remember more about your past, the detail of your past, where you were born and when and what you did, and etc., who you knew, all that sort of stuff. You will remember it far better in the future than ever you do now, because the memories don't go away. The memories are permanently stored. You cannot erase the memories. A person with a bad memory is a person who isn't able to access those memories. It's not a person who doesn't have memories. Oh, you will do. There's nothing you can do to stop the memories being recorded, as it were, but they're there. And in the future you'll be able to tap them better and you'll remember more. But anyway, the point is, we're going through lives at the moment, but it's not an endless cycle. As a person through many lives evolves, they eventually get to the stage where they realize that there is only one path. It's like, coming up to the apex of a pyramid. Once you get to that point, you've only got that one point. You can come up, it's quite wide lower down, but you come to that one point where everything meets. And it's exactly the same in evolution. As you go through many lives, you realize that to go any further, there's only one way that you can do it. And it's something, again, that's been known for hundreds of thousands of years, and has been spoken about by great teachers, certainly over the last 5,000 years, since the arrival on earth of the great master known as Krishna, who incidentally came from Saturn. He actually, among others, spoke about the philosophies of life. I'm not going into too much about Krishna himself, but the point is, when one gets to a certain point in one's own progress, you realize that this normal consciousness that we all have at different levels, but your basic consciousness can only take you to that point, and you can't go beyond that. Certainly not in any meaningful time period. And the only way that you can go any further is not by going out there, but by going in here. And this is why in Buddhism and Hinduism, for example, and in Christianity before it got warped by those people in Italy, who warped and distorted the teachings. There's only one way, and that is by starting to learn how to do the practices, scientifically proved practices that we call yoga. You sit down quietly without any distractions, and you become aware of yourself. You become aware of your thoughts. You become aware of your breath. And over a period of time, you will find the information will come to you, and you will learn certain exercises where you learn to control the breath, and you become aware of what happens when the lungs fill, when the lungs empty, the diaphragm moving, and you also become aware of the mental effects it has on you. Over a period of time, you perform what is known as pranayama, the breathing exercises. What you may not realize as you're doing it, that what it is also teaching you is how to concentrate on something and keep your focus. Because You know the old joke about grasshopper, the student, the mind jumps around, the master telling the yogi student, that your mind is like a grasshopper. Yes, it is. Most people, you try and think of something and something else comes into your mind. I will throw in, this is, as I said before, very spontaneous. Sir George King gave some of the best advice I've heard on this, and he said, if you're trying to concentrate on something and your mind suddenly jumps to something else, I've got to do the shopping, I've got to do the washing, what am I doing on Thursday, etc. Don't fight it, you will lose. Follow it, like the fisherman who gets the fish on the end of the line, and you don't pull it in immediately, you let it run. Gently pull it back, let it run again, and you gradually tire the fish out. And bit by bit you bring it closer. I'm not a fisherman, so if I've got that wrong, please forgive me, but you understand the model. It's the same with your mind. When you try and concentrate on something and another thought comes into your head, don't fight it. See where it goes. You'll come to the end of that thought and you can bring your mind back. Try again. Something else comes into your mind. Let it go. Follow it. Watch it. See where it goes. And it will come to the end of that thought. The thought will die away. Bring your mind back. Keep doing that. And eventually the mind will get tired of going off like that. And it won't do it so much. And you learn how to keep the mind focused. And it's only when you start to do this that you start to gain a greater awareness of many things. You become aware of certain energies in the body. And one of the main energies, or probably the main energy, and this is kept at a very basic level, for complete newcomers, at the base of the spine, not far from the coccyx, there is a certain atomic structure which is known in Eastern philosophy as Kundalini, or at least an energy which is contained in that atomic structure is known as Kundalini, the serpent power. That energy you can imagine symbolically like a snake that's coiled up and it's got its head resting down in the middle. It's like it's resting. When it starts to wake up, the head lifts up in the middle and it starts to uncoil. And this energy in the base of the spine has been likened to that, and it's known often as the serpent power, the Kundalini. When that energy starts to activate, it will come up certain channels in the spine, and the first place it will go is to the front of the body. And you know what is meant by that. You know the crude men in the pub who talk about you know the feeling. You get a certain urge. When you get that urge, it is the Kundalini at the base of the spine that is moving into the front of the body. When you're doing the yogic exercises, you learn how to be aware of this, because you will feel it. You try and do some of the yogic exercises, and if you haven't got the control, you will feel that energy move to the front of the body, and you'll feel, you know what I mean? And you learn how to gradually, mentally, imagine it moving back to the spine. When you first try and do it, it won't happen. Like many things, it's pure imagination. But the point is that the more that you imagine that, the more it is likely to happen, and it starts to happen. And eventually you can bring that energy back to the spine. And over a long period of time, and preferably, in fact almost, I would insist that you have somebody watching you or assisting you who knows about this, so that they can help to protect you, because it can be dangerous if you get it wrong, but it's a stage you have to go through. You will learn over time how to bring that energy up the spine. In the front of the body there are what in Eastern philosophy are known as chakras, wheels of energy, energy vortices, which, like the heads of flowers, come off the spine to the front of the body. As that energy comes up, each one of those energy flowers will blossom. Okay? And you will have all sorts of psychic experiences. Don't dwell on the psychic phenomena. That's like the materialism in this world. It's a distraction. Bring the energy back to the spine. Notice what's going on, yes, but don't attach to it. Bring the energy back to the spine and try and bring that energy mentally in your mind further up the spine. You'll learn how to do this. And each center in turn will open up and you'll close it down. And the energy comes higher. Eventually it will come to the top of the spine and this center will open up, the Christ or brow chakra. And you will see things that will amaze you. You will begin to see the world as it really is, not the illusion that we see with these things. These eyes cannot show you the true picture of what's here. As Sir Oliver Lodge, a brilliant scientist of his day, way ahead of his associates, as Sir Oliver Lodge once said, "Nobody can explain everything that happens when I wiggle my little finger." There are very few individuals on this planet that can really have a good go at that. There are one or two who do pretty well, but they're not of the norm. There are so many things. When you start to see through here, and you start to see what is actually here, talk about mind-blowing. Anyway, the point is, over time, I'm keeping this very condensed, over time you will gradually learn to gain complete control over your total body structure. You'll be able to, at will, to slow your heart down should you need to do that. Very often you won't need to do that, but you'll have the ability to do it. And you will have psychic sight, psychic vision, clear vision, clairvoyance, clear hearing, clear audience, clear cognizance, clear knowing. You will know things, even though you don't know how you know. Like I said, giving lectures to people, you know things and you don't know how you know, but you know them, and this comes. Over time, you will approach what is known as adeptship. An adept is what you might call a trainee master. As time goes on and you practice these things continually through the lives, it's a long process, you eventually gain mastership. Total mastership over your body and your environment. But you have tremendous discipline at that point. You could do many things, but the great subtlety of evolution is you learn an ability in order not to use it. Ask anyone who studies the martial arts. There are many people in martial arts who can do many things, but if they've had a good teacher, they've been taught, yes, this is how you do that, how you manipulate these energies, this is how you move the body, whatever it is, but you don't do it. And it's an aspect of self-discipline. Once an individual becomes a master, as each individual will, every individual will, in their time, even if it's 200 lives down the line, eventually they'll get there. Everyone will. When you get to that stage, one of the requirements in our experience pattern, which is already preset, is that you will have to spend several lives as a master in service to mankind, indiscriminately, not just this group of people or that group of people, but mankind. Some people will say that Saint Germain is affiliated with America. No, he isn't. Saint Germain is a highly advanced master, and he looks on mankind as a whole, not this nation or that nation or this religion or whatever. It's mankind. And that's how you will eventually look at it. You won't discriminate between different people in that way. You'll have to spend several lives as a master in service to mankind. And when you get to that stage, you will quite happily do that because you'll have a greater understanding as to the ins and outs of it all. and you'll know the reasons behind it, which many of us don't know yet, but we will learn them. When you have spent a certain period of time through a number of lives in service to mankind, and you get to the stage where you deserve it, you will be told on some occasion to present yourself to a certain location at a certain time, and you will very happily do that. And that location may not even be on this earth, but you will be able to go. See, this is the stuff that you won't normally hear spoken about. You will present yourself at a specific location. And when you do, you may find that there's a large number of people who have also come to watch you go through an initiation, your major initiation on this earth. During that event, a very elevated master from outside of this earth will, for a few moments, and that's all it will probably be, will come into your presence. That elevated being from another world coming here will channel energy from the ethers through himself, send it to you. It will surround and permeate you, and it will cause a total cellular rebuild of your body. When you have gone through this experience, you are freed from the reincarnatory cycle. You are formally freed from having to remain on this earth, and you become what's known as an interplanetary being. That master will come, do what he has to do, go. He may not speak to anyone. It may only take a couple of minutes. He will come, he will do it, he will go. You then have a body which will last for thousands of years and will not age. I have a wonderful picture, it's an artist's impression, but apparently it's quite accurate, of a wonderful lady who is what's known as an ascended master. She is known by the name Leto, L-E-T-O. I believe she went through her initiation of ascension, as it's called, something, was it 700 or 800 years ago, something like that. And since then she's always looked as though she's about 19, 20 years old. For the next 20,000 years she'll probably look like she's 19 or 20 years old. She won't age. Saint Germain is an ascended master. There's a number of them who are living on this planet who could have left, but they actually chose to remain here because they saw the plight of mankind and decided to stay here. You know, to be of service, because being an ascended master now, they can be of even more service to mankind, and they work quietly in the background. You don't even know they're there, but they're doing very important things. They're not necessarily at that stage helping any one specific individual. They may work with nations or indiscriminately. I mean, not the Americans because they're Americans, you know, but they may work with that group of people who are doing some good and help them to do that. You know what I mean? We don't know the actual actions of them because it's at such a high level and it's not openly spoken about. It wouldn't be good to speak about it openly because behind the scenes, remember, we always have dark forces who are trying to sabotage all the time. I'm going to make this very, very brief because this is becoming longer than I wished it to be. Sufficient to say that when one goes through the initiation of ascension and one is released from the reincarnatory cycle on earth, one is also free to go to another world out there to start gaining totally new experiences in different environments. I'm very quickly going to deal with something that some astronomers will throw their hands up in horror about, but I swear before God, I know this to be true. All the planets in this solar system and some of the moons are inhabited. All of them. Some of the moons, all of the planets. inhabited, outside of the Earth that is, inhabited by beings who are millions and in some cases many hundreds of millions of years senior to us in evolution. Cosmic masters, as we call them. When you leave this Earth, as one day you will, through ascension, depending on your abilities, your aspirations and your past experience, there are 4 planets in this system that you will have the possibility to go to and use as a base of operations, but you will never again, after the initiation of ascension, you will never again be limited to any one planet like we are here. There are many individuals who inhabit Mars. There are. Some of the Martians have been on this Earth. I physically met one in Fulham, London. I've stood in the presence of a Martian entity and spoken to him several times, knowing that the intelligence looking out at me through those eyes was from Mars. We've had more visitors from Venus than any other planet in this system. In fact, any other planet, period. I can mention some of the beings who've been here and lived, for the period of a lifetime on Earth. The most advanced individual to come and live openly, well, partially openly, because his true identity wasn't really wasn't revealed at the time, but the most advanced being from another world to come and live amongst Earth people was the Lord Krishna, who comes from Saturn. There is a master on the planet at the moment. We don't have a name for him. He's probably millions of years more advanced than Krishna, and also comes from Saturn. He's just known as the Great Father, or Babaji, the Lord Babaji. If you read Paramhansa Yogananda's book, Autobiography of a Yogi, Yogananda describes a meeting he had with the Master Babaji, who is actually a Saturnian intelligence inhabiting a body on Earth. Anyway, you will be able to go to one of 4 planets, but not be stuck on it like we are here. The 4 planets that you will be able to go to are Mars, Jupiter, Neptune and Pluto. Each one has a different environment, and the inhabitants of those worlds have different skills and go through different experiences. One of the most obvious ones is the planet Jupiter, which is not just a big ball of gas, even though it might appear, looking through a telescope or from an orbiting probe, it might look like a ball of gas. But there is a considerable number of inhabitants who do physically live, let's just say, on Jupiter. The inhabitants of Jupiter are individuals who are particularly skilled in what we call sound vibration. We would call it music. Sonic vibration. The manipulation of light and colour and scent. Uplifting influences. It's because great masters from Jupiter have actually been to this Earth. I can think of 1 or 2 of the great composers who may well have come here from Jupiter, and use their sonic vibration, their music, to try and inspire us, which is what they try and do. And it's because of this association, for example, with music, that we have certain words that most people don't realise the origin of. An inhabitant of Jupiter is known as a Jovian, and when you become very happy and you're inspired by music or some such thing, you become jovial, as per Jupiter, under the influence of Jupiter. So that's where the word comes from. You can go to Mars, Jupiter, Neptune or Pluto. We know very little about Neptune and Pluto. The inhabitants of Mars are highly skilled engineers and scientists, very versed in remote control and some unbelievably amazing technology that makes ours look very primitive. having spent millions of years based on one of those 4 planets, but occasionally when you feel the need, when you need the experience, or when others out there need the benefit of your experience, you can leave that planet, go to other worlds and come back and whatever, and you can stay on other worlds, like 1 or 2 of them have come to this Earth, But over a period of time, possibly over millions of years, you gradually gain more and more experience, higher and higher levels of consciousness, and you can then go through another initiation which allows you to take up residence on Venus or Uranus. The Venusians particularly are known throughout this galaxy as great teachers of planetary races. They're known throughout this galaxy and beyond. Several of the Venusian masters have come and lived on this earth. One we knew as the Lord Buddha, who came here approximately 2,500 years ago and returned to Earth in 1956 and is now resident upon Earth. He holds a formal position. He is known as the Kumara of Shambhala. He took over from another Venusian who left, known as the Sanat Kumara, who left in 1956, and Buddha replaced him. About 400 years after the birth of Buddha on Earth, another Venusian, known, I believe quite correctly, as the younger brother of Buddha, came and lived on this earth under the pretense of being an earthman, and that is the master that we call Jesus, who said over and over again that he came from the bright and morning star. Yes, he did. He was from Venus, the bright and morning star. Okay? You spend millions and millions of years gaining experience, going to other worlds and helping other races, even outside of this galaxy. There's a vast, a teacher with vast experience, Millions of years later, you go through more initiations. I'm not going into the detail of them here, because it's already becoming longer than I thought it would. But you go through other initiations which allow you to take up residence on Saturn. There are basically, keeping this very simple, there are 2 basic levels of evolution on Saturn. You have what you may call the secondary Saturnians, like an outer court, if you will. Again, millions and millions of years later, I'm having to rush through this, you go through further initiations, mystical initiations, which allow you to go into the inner sanctum, the inner court on Saturn, and you become a primary Saturnian. These beings are referred to by beings like Jesus and Buddha and Krishna. They are referred to as the perfects. When they speak to us about them, they call them the perfects of Saturn. Unbelievably vast entities, in this solar system. Many, many, many millions of years later, primary Saturnian, having gone through more mystical initiations, I'm missing a lot of this out, will eventually take up residence, and this is the thing that's going to really turn some people off, but it's absolutely true, will take up residence within the sphere of the Sun, and they become a lesser solar lord. Yes, they're inhabitants in the Sun, within the Sun. They don't use organic, biochemical bodies like this. They have energy bodies which are completely mutable. They can exist in any environment that exists in nature. These become secondary solar lords. Lesser solar lords, I meant to say. Lesser planetary, they're known as lesser planetary lords. When the opportunity arises in a solar system like this, for example, some of those solar lords who are vibrating the right way will come together through even higher initiations, and they become what's known as a planetary logos. They move out into space and they form a new body around themselves, and a new planet is born, like the one beneath our feet, the Mother Earth, that billions of years ago was a group of solar lords who came together to form a greater multiple entity and is now the life force of this planet, the same as we have on all the other planets of this system. Originally solar lords, but they've all come up, as it were, through the ranks, because it's a set evolutionary scheme. Planets will go through a number of incarnations as a planet. The Mother Earth beneath my feet, yours, is currently about halfway through her third incarnation as a planet in this system. So we can assume her lifespan is probably going to be about 9 to 10 billion years, something like that. Okay? Venus, in our mythology, is known as the elder sister of Earth, is currently in her seventh and final incarnation. She's had 6 incarnations before the one she's currently in, as a planet in this solar system. And then these astronomers look out through their telescopes or whatever, use radio telescopes, whatever, spectrometers or whatever, and they say, oh well, of course the cosmos is only 13.7 billion years old. Like hell it is. Look at the Earth, that's still young as a planet in this system. She's only in her third incarnation. She's had 2 before. If we assume, just as a ballpark figure, her current incarnation is going to be about 9 million years, we can assume, it's not illogical, that her previous incarnations were about the same length. That's 9, 18, 22.5 billion years that she's been a physical planet, not the same one. It's her third incarnation as a planet. That's not allowing for the time before she became a planet and the time between her incarnations. Look at Venus. It's had 6 complete incarnations as a planet in this system. Okay? 6 times 9, what's that, 54? 54 billion years that entity has gained experience as a planet, not allowing for the time before it became a planet and the time in between the incarnations. And we don't know at what stage in her current incarnation she is. Is she early on in her current incarnation, or is she towards the end of it? She is approaching the time where, having completed 7 incarnations, as each planet will, that they eventually go back to the Sun as an even more highly evolved being. Why do you think the environmental conditions on the basic physical level of Venus, you've got these extremely high temperatures, this acidic atmosphere? It's because it's approaching the conditions found in the Sun. Because eventually it will go back to the Sun, and it's raising its vibrations to be complementary to the Sun for when it goes back. That's why the conditions on the Earth are far milder. On a younger planet it will, although in the early stages of each planet, of course, you probably have volcanoes and earthquakes and all the usual things until it stabilizes. We are told by beings from other worlds that our Sun is in the region of 300 billion years old. Where does 13.7 come from? Doesn't. Nonsense. Absolute nonsense, according to some of the most intelligent beings in the solar system. Anyway, the point is, a number of planetary logi eventually become a solar logos and a new star is born. The star goes through a particular incarnation. It throws off the basic physical body that it's been using. You get a supernova. The consciousness may reincarnate as a star again, or it may join with other solar logi and become an even greater star, maybe the central star of a galaxy. The galaxy is a living being. It's not a single entity like us. Ultimately, all the galaxies will eventually come together, and so just the same as theoretically in the beginning there was one that some people call God, and it differentiated into quadrillions upon pentillions of life forms that had to get to grips with matter, gain control over matter. As they slowly gained control, they started coming together, little bit to little bit, coming together. And on our planet, you know, the life forms here had to come up through the mineral kingdom, the vegetable kingdom, the animal kingdom, the same consciousnesses. Human kingdom, moving into the superhuman kingdom. Eventually going through the superhuman kingdoms, you know, going up through Saturn. Eventually take up residence in the sun, become a planet. Planets join together to form stars. Stars come together to form greater stars. The stars may be the beginning of a new galaxy. Galaxies come together. So it's the differentiation and then the coming back together again. This is the going back to God, except it theoretically takes forever. Okay? And just in the same way as theoretically one can imagine that in the first billionth of a second all the life came out without form, it had to gain form and gain experience. In the last theoretical billionth of a second it all comes together and goes back in a billionth of a second. Not one life form in the whole cosmos can go back to God, the original source, until all life, all manifestation, everything in the cosmos is ready to go back, and it came out as one, it goes back as one. That's it. One last niggly thing, terminology is important. I left a comment on a video a few days ago, and somebody was talking about when you die you go to a different dimension. No, you do not. Get the terminology right. I used to work at London's Natural History Museum, not in a scientific role. I was a security warder, and I got told off by scientists because of the way I phrased things, and yet I was the one who was saying it correctly and they were the ones who got it wrong. What is a dimension? A dimension is something which is measurable. Length is a dimension. Breadth, height, 3 physical dimensions for something that is manifested. That thing, whatever it is never the same from one microsecond to the next, because all the atoms and molecules are in a continual state of motion. It changes through time. Length, breadth, height, time. No confusion. And you don't need any maths to understand it. Okay? Okay, the point is, those things are dimensions. Around this Earth, and around every other planet in this solar system, and even more especially around and within the Sun, there are different planes of vibration. All the matter which is in this world, it has within its atomic and molecular structure, it has energetic vibrations which all occur within a certain range of frequencies. Like anything that has frequency, when you have a vibration, when you have frequency, you also have octaves or harmonics. Around this Earth and permeating this Earth, you have 6 other physical worlds which all occupy the same space, interpenetrating each other. And from one to another, I believe I'm right in saying that there is a fixed multiplication factor. The next plane of vibration above this in terms of vibration, but occupies the same space as us here, is what we call the astral realm or astral plane. And I believe that all matter and all energies of the astral plane vibrate 49 times faster than the equivalent one does on this plane. Go to level 3, which some call the mental plane. Everything on the mental plane, which is also here, is vibrating 49 times faster than it does on the astral realm or astral plane. 2,401 times faster than it does here. And as you go up through the 7 planes which exist around and through this Earth, it's times 49, times 49, times 49. When you go up to level 7, 7th heaven, you know, he's in 7th heaven, you know, he's on the highest plane of vibration. That's where it comes from. On level 7, that's 49 to the power of 6, which is, was it 13.84 billion times faster than here. and that applies to all matter and all energies, including light. Light on this plane travels at about just less than 300 million meters a second. Okay? You go onto the astral realms and you will be able to see, well, be aware of this yourself to some extent. Light on the astral plane travels 49 times faster than that. On level 3, light travels 2,401 times faster than light does when you measure it here. The one thing that you find... Oh, I'm going off the subject. Okay, so you can go, when you come to the end of your useful life here and you pass on, you don't die, of course. Nobody ever dies. Nobody ever dies. But you move to a different set of vibrations. You don't go into a different dimension, which is absolute bilge. It's a total misuse of the terminology. You move to a different plane. You may have a different set of dimensions, but it's not to a dimension. So when you hear somebody saying you go to a different dimension, you know that person has got to do some homework because they've got the terminology wrong. Okay? Oh, excuse me. Yes, and this must be the final comment. When one takes an interest in mystical things, in metaphysical, occult in the best sense, in the right sense, things, one of the things you realise is that you can make statements which apparently are opposite, and they're both correct. Years ago, in my early days of giving talks, I was giving a talk on reincarnation, and the person in the audience who tried to heckle me said, "I believe you only live once." And I looked him straight in the eye and I said, "Yes, you're absolutely correct." Then I paused, and you could see the confusion on people's faces. And I said, "Because you don't die." You see, it's correct to say that you reincarnate and have many lives. Yes, you do. It's also correct to say you only live once and you never die. That's also correct. Because it's the consciousness that lives forever. It never dies. But it takes body after body after body after body. You reincarnate. So yes, you take many lives in a basic physical form, but the consciousness lives forever, never dies, and is slowly evolving. It only lives once, and that's for all time. See, so both statements are correct. There are many statements like this. One of the ways you can tell that a statement is true sometimes is because you've got these opposites, both of which are correct, but the one thing that's missing is context. Anyway, I've waffled enough, and I've had to race through some of this because it's such a vast subject, but I'm hoping this will at least get some people thinking. And much of the information that I've spoken about, but certainly what happens as we progress and we go through the initiation of ascension, which is what Jesus did when he rebuilt his body so that it would then last for thousands of years, and he no longer had to die, as we do in the basic form. When you want to know about that reincarnation, ascension, interplanetary existence, and all the way up to the evolutionary status you will have by the time you go into solar existence within the sun, that is all mentioned in the teachings of the Aetherius Society. And in fact there is a beautiful book, worth more than your house or car ever will be, according to the master, and he's correct, a book entitled The Nine Freedoms, which can be got from the Aetherius Society at aetherius.org, and that book will detail it all for you. It's a very, very valuable book, sold for a pittance. It's worth getting if you're interested in these things. Long waffle. Apologies for the delays between my talks. I don't get much chance to do them, and I hope this one has raised some points of interest. So whoever you are, my dear friends around the world, even on different planes or even different worlds, I don't know, they probably won't bother with me, but whoever you are, I bless you and thank you.